I still love doing a live event, even after COVID. It's always fun to try to figure out when the actual video is on. But hello, all those who are joining us. My name is Robert Baines. I am the President and CEO of the NATO Association of Canada. We are a charitable organization dedicated to informing Canadians about the value of security and the importance of NATO. These are things that most Canadians don't have to grapple with in their everyday life. That's great, but it does bring on with it its own problems. When you don't think about infrastructure, when you don't think about the different pieces that maintain the security architecture that Canada depends on, it can be a bit problematic. When you don't recognize something, that means you don't appreciate it. If you don't appreciate it, you're not going to maintain it. And the security that Canada and the rest of NATO has enjoyed, certainly since the founding of the alliance 75 years ago now, is just remarkable. And Canadians cannot forget that. That's the job of the NATO Association, to ensure that Canadians appreciate the value of security and the importance of NATO. Today, of course, we're going to have a great conversation with the Ambassador of Croatia. I've always been thrilled when we get to meet our diplomatic friends one by one over the weeks, over the months, because it really does show the personal foundations of NATO, the importance of that relationship, the friendships that are at the base of the alliance. And when we get to do it with our strong partners across the alliance, it gives you an idea of that compounded one by one till you reach 31, and including Canada, 32 members of NATO, all dedicated to the idea that an attack upon one is an attack upon all. The great insight which was created after the Second World War of non-zero sum relationship building, where we all put a little bit in and get far more out. Today, we're going to get a bit more of a zoomed-in view on the Croatia-Canada relationship and what that means for NATO, how NATO acts as something that binds our two countries together, and perhaps something that Croatia can teach us about the value of NATO, something that, as I mentioned, most Canadians don't always think about. And with that, I'd like to introduce you to our two moderators today. We have Razan Ganatra and Bogdana Torbina, two of our outstanding members of the NATO Association team. And they're part of our community that you can be a part of as well. Both members of our team in the office, but also members, supporters throughout and across Canada, trying to make sure that more people hear about the great work that Canada does as a member of NATO and why it's so important for us to do us. So, Razan, Bogdana, please take us away and introduce our dear friend, His Excellency.
Thank you so much, Robert. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our series of events celebrating NATO's 75th anniversary and the member states of the Alliance. My name is Bogdana Turbina, and I'm an engagement coordinator at the NATO Association of Canada.
Hello, everyone. My name is Razan Ganatra, and I am a program editor and professional development coordinator here at the NATO Association.
We are honored to be joined today by His Excellency Vice Skračić, the Ambassador of Croatia to Canada. Ambassador, thank you so much for joining us today. Now, before we get into the Ambassador's opening remarks, I would like to briefly go over his bio for our audience. Prior to beginning his posting as Ambassador of the Republic of Croatia to Canada in 2019, His Excellency held the position of Assistant Minister for Political Affairs and Political Director in charge of bilateral relations with non-European states and EU Common Foreign and Security Policy at the Ministry of Foreign and European Affairs. He also previously served at the Croatian Embassy in Washington, D.C., and at the Croatian Parliament Missions to the UN in both New York and Geneva. Prior to this assignment, Ambassador Skračić was the Director for Africa, the Middle East, Asia, and Oceania, Russia, and the Eastern Partnership. And prior to that, the head of the Division for CSDP and Peacekeeping at the Ministry of Foreign and European Affairs. During his long service career, Ambassador Skračić also held a number of functional positions within the UN system, including Vice President of the Fourth Meeting of States Parties to the Ottawa Convention on Anti-Personnel Mines, in 2002 and Vice Chairman of the UN Disarmament Commission in 1999. Ambassador graduated with a degree in political science and sociology from the University of New England in 1989 and did postgraduate work in international relations at the University of Zagreb in 1994. Ambassador, we invite you to begin with some opening remarks before we begin with the questions.
Thank you, all of you. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Razan. Thank you. I'm very, very pleased to be here or back here, Bogdana, for another session with the NATO Association. I think it's an excellent job you guys are doing. You're bringing something back to a Canadian audience, which, like Robert said in the beginning, sometimes you tend to forget, being isolated as you are on the other side of the Atlantic, gives you a different perspective. This is where the Alliance has an excellent role in bringing us together. I'm glad to be able to bring to you a view from Croatia after 15 years of membership. Now, celebrating NATO's 75th anniversary is our opportunity as allies to reflect on the Alliance's history and achievements, as well as on existing and future security challenges. As we know, NATO was created in 1949 as a democratic counterbalance to the totalitarian Soviet Union. From that time, the Alliance has safeguarded peace, freedom, and security for much of Western Europe, thereby also ensuring its prosperity. After the fall of communism, states in Central and Eastern Europe embraced democracy and a common vision of a Europe whole and free, making their own choices and sovereign decisions to, amongst other things, join the Alliance. Through the decades of its existence, we have consistently touted that some of NATO's greatest strengths include its open door policy and its ability to adapt and maintain a strong transatlantic bond. While NATO is a defensive alliance, we must never lose sight of the fact that it is also a value-based political community of democracies. As NATO celebrates 75 years of its existence, Croatia marks the 15th anniversary of its membership in the Alliance. Croatia, unfortunately, did not have the privilege of 75 years of peace. From 1991 to 1995, we had to fight for and defend our freedom and democracy. Facing a much stronger aggressor at the time, we prevailed against all odds. After our victory, which much like in Ukraine was and is being paid in blood, we transformed into a modern contributor of security and stability on the European continent, firmly embedded in the transatlantic community. Now, Croatia, along with Albania, received an invitation for membership in April 2008 at the NATO summit in Bucharest, and following short accession procedures, became a full NATO member as of April 1, 2009. In this capacity, we participated in the summit meeting of the Alliance in the same year on April 3rd and 4th in Strasbourg and Kiel. Over the past years, through its membership in the Alliance, Croatia has worked to further strengthen and consolidate its international position. As a country that crosses or spans Central Europe, the Danube, Adriatic, and the Mediterranean, we represent an important link between these European regions. We actively participate in the creation of Alliance policies and NATO's collective decision-making, whose unanimous decisions reflect our national positions, priorities, and interests. Croatia demonstrates its solidarity with our allies through significant contribution to NATO missions and operations, as well as by participating in the strengthening of deterrence efforts and defense of NATO's eastern flank. We do this so that we can add to the Alliance's overall international obligation for stabilizing crisis hotspots. As of last year, almost 9,500 Croatian troops have participated in NATO-led missions, operations, and activities. With its 293 soldiers, Croatia is currently participating in 5 NATO missions and operations, of which the highest number is in KFOR, 149. As a contribution to strengthening deterrence and defense in on NATO's eastern flank, Croatian troops are deployed in Poland within the Enhanced Forward Presence Battle Group, while we also have close to another 70 soldiers in the Enhanced Vigilance Activity Battle Groups in Hungary and Bulgaria. Along with developing capabilities of our own armed forces and with technologically advanced and innovative solutions and strengthening our national defense industry, we also participate in the systematic transfer of knowledge and experience, especially those gained during the Homeland War. The anniversary of Croatia's membership in NATO is a confirmation of the continuation of our strong presence within Euro-Atlantic security structures. At the same time, NATO's anniversary is an opportunity to reflect upon the alliance's history and achievements, including current and future security challenges. Now, of that, first and foremost, Russia's aggressive war against Ukraine has changed the alliance's geopolitical and security environment. By attacking a sovereign country, Russia has violated the norms and principles that contribute to a stable European security order. The peace in the Euro-Atlantic area we enjoyed as a community is in danger. As allies, we have to stand strong in protecting our key democratic principles and values against authoritarianism and the negation of the rule of law. By supporting Ukraine and by making significant contributions to numerous missions and operations in line with NATO's 360-degree approach to security, allies underline solidarity, unity, and resolve in restoring and preserving peace and stability in Europe and on a global scale. NATO's three core tasks, deterrence and defense, crisis prevention and management, and cooperative security, has grown in content and reach as our security environment grew more complex. The NATO of today invests in its resilience, climate adaptation, and technological edge. Today, we have 32 allies, and the latest accession of Finland and Sweden have strengthened our overall capacities and made our allies safer. Their membership is also a sign, the most visible sign of the future direction of the alliance, an alliance that is stronger and constantly evolving. Today, perhaps more than ever, NATO continues to strengthen its unity and solidarity, based on the strength of the transatlantic bond and shared democratic values. NATO was and remains a key factor of peace and security in the Euro-Atlantic area, and continues to be a community of free and democratic states eager to protect and uphold a rules-based international order. Through NATO, Croatia will continue to work to preserve and strengthen security and stability on the European continent, especially in Southeastern Europe, promoting the fundamental values of democracy and freedom. That's all for my introductory remarks. I look forward to the questions you have to ask and to further developing this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you for your opening remarks, Ambassador. As you've mentioned, Croatia officially joined the alliance on April 1st in 2009, and this year Croatia celebrated its 15th anniversary of being a member of the alliance. Can you please talk a little bit about the history of Croatia joining NATO, and most importantly, the ways in which Croatia's role within NATO has changed since its accession, and how you see Croatia's contributions evolve in the future?
Yes, I can. Like I mentioned in my introductory remarks, from 1991 to 1995, Croatia had to fight for its freedom and democracy, faced with a much stronger aggressor at the time. I would say it would be safe to say that we prevailed against the odds. In the years following our victory, we spent much time and effort to transform ourselves into a modern and dependent contributor of security and stability on the European continent, firmly embedded in the transatlantic community. This is the path we chose, and we were fortunate that in this we had the support of many of our allies. Let me reiterate, having transformed itself into a security consumer to a security provider, Croatia intends to continue to show solidarity through significant contributions to NATO missions and operations, by participating in the strengthening of deterrence and defense of NATO's eastern flank. We also intend to fulfill all our international obligations in stabilizing crisis hotspots. We will support all necessary adjustments to the alliance to address the multiple security challenges we are faced with, given that the security environment of today is defined by strategic competition, pervasive instability, and recurrent shocks not to mention the nefarious meddling coming from the East on the internal affairs of countries like in our region in Southeastern Europe, which is a continuous issue of concern for us.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ambassador. So as you mentioned in your opening remarks, even before officially joining the alliance, Croatia had begun participating in NATO-led operations and missions. Croatian troops were involved in the ISAF operation in Afghanistan from 2003 to 2015, and in the NATO-led Resolute Support Mission from 2015 to 2020. And as you had mentioned, even today, Croatian military contingents are participating in NATO-led missions in Kosovo, in the enhanced forward presence in Poland and Lithuania, as well as the enhanced vigilance activity in Hungary. Could you please elaborate a little bit more about Croatia's role in supporting these NATO-led operations?
Yeah, sure. So by participating in NATO-led missions and operations even before our NATO membership, Croatia has shown a willingness to align with NATO's vision of managing complex environments across all domains. Experience has taught us that the tempo and diversity of operations and missions in which NATO is involved has increased significantly. But let me reiterate here, if you want to be a part of a club, you have to make sure that your policies align with those of that club even before you join. This is showing determination that you want to be a member and a part of this whole. So in 2022 Madrid summit, NATO set a new baseline for its deterrence and defense posture. Allies continue delivering on this commitment, especially by deploying robust combat-ready forces to NATO's eastern flank. This is absolutely necessary, especially considering the Russian invasion of Ukraine. There are now 8 fully operational multinational battle groups in and let me say by order: Bulgaria, Estonia, Hungary, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Romania, and Slovakia. As a relatively small country, by participating in the battle groups in Poland, Hungary, and Bulgaria, plus KFOR and NATO mission Iraq, Croatia continues to punch above its weight, or at least we believe so, and show how every contribution to Euro-Atlantic security matters. This also clearly demonstrates how we ensure that NATO is ready, willing, and able to defend every inch of Allied territory. Croatia's armed forces, reinforced with the recent purchase and delivery of the Rafale multi-purpose fighter jets, continue to develop their capabilities, increase their level of interoperability with our other allied forces, and directly contribute to strengthening collective defense. Joint exercises is also an excellent way of showing this, and I think Croatia has demonstrated with exercises on its territory how much it is willing and ready and able to work together with other allies.
Thank you for that. I would like to go a little bit into the security environment in the Western Balkans. So following the tour of the Western Balkans in 2023, NATO Chief Jens Stoltenberg commented on the fragile state of the region with, quote, secessionist threats in Bosnia and Herzegovina, referring to the threat of Republika Srpska secession, as well as, quote, a fragile security situation in Kosovo and a stalled normalization between Belgrade and Pristina. What role does Croatia play in stabilizing and maintaining peace in the region? And what more should be done by the NATO alliance?
Thank you for this question. I mean, you know that there's a constant preoccupation in the Western Balkans for Croatia, simply because it's our neighborhood. We're neighbors, and we have. Let me put it this way: we are glad that the issue of security in the Western Balkans has been kept high on NATO's agenda, also on the EU's agenda. But this is a region of strategic importance for NATO. We need our neighbors in the Western Balkans to be firmly embedded in Euro-Atlantic structures. As an EU and NATO member, Croatia considers itself a key ally in this endeavor. You can say that there is no one other country in the EU or NATO who is more pro-enlargement than what Croatia is. Also, in the last 3 decades, we have invested a great deal of political, diplomatic, and financial efforts in regional security and stability. As for NATO's missions in the region, KFOR remains crucial for maintaining a safe and secure environment and freedom of movement in Kosovo. Croatia's armed forces participate in KFOR with 149 troops and 1 helicopter. It is, following our withdrawal from Afghanistan, currently our biggest contribution to any mission. On Kosovo, Croatia constantly and continually urges Belgrade and Pristina to de-escalate and re-engage constructively in the EU-facilitated dialogue, which we feel is the only way to achieve lasting peace and stability in the region.
Thank you so much. So following on from that question, Bosnia and Herzegovina is one of the partner countries who have actually declared their aspirations to joining the NATO membership. What does the possibility of more Balkan countries joining the alliance mean for Croatia? And what role can Croatia have in facilitating that accession process?
Yeah, just to continue then, again, let me reiterate, Croatia strongly supported both Montenegro and North Macedonia's membership in NATO. We're at the forefront there. Croatia also strongly supports reforms that will enable the future NATO membership of Bosnia and Herzegovina. When the time comes and when the time is right, also for Kosovo. There is unfinished business in the Western Balkans. It would be important not only for NATO, but also for the overall stability and prosperity of the Western Balkans region. With regard to Bosnia and Herzegovina, I mean, let me remind you that Croatia shares a 1,000-kilometer border with Bosnia and Herzegovina, so it's clearly a matter of Croatia's national security. We remain committed to Bosnia and Herzegovina's Euro-Atlantic path, and in this regard, we will continue to support all reform efforts, including through the newly agreed NATO defense capacity building package, for which Croatia allocated €500,000. We support all Western Balkans countries to join the EU and NATO where they wish to. We all know that Serbia does not wish to join NATO, that it has a declared wish to join the EU. And here I will remind everybody that we have consistently said that all countries wishing to join NATO and the EU, the policies that they promote have to reflect the policies of these 2 organizations. So, to be clear, all countries in the region need to ensure dedication to a value-based reform process, avoid multi-vector policies, and align with the EU's common foreign and security policy. That's our position.
Thank you. Moving on to the war that Russia is waging against Ukraine at the time and the hybrid threats that are emerging from the conflict. It has been shown that Croatia and the Balkans are very susceptible to Russian disinformation on the war in Ukraine and anti-NATO/anti-EU rhetoric. Moreover, the war in Ukraine has brought to attention some underlying existing divisions in the region, which Russia capitalizes on and exploits through its disinformation campaigns. What impact has disinformation had on the social cohesion in Croatia, if any? And what measures is Croatia currently taking to counter these hybrid threats, for example, through fact-checking systems, etc.? And are there any other measures that should be put in place?
Yes, thank you. I mean, Croatia is facing various hybrid threats that originate primarily from its immediate surrounding region, or more precisely in countries in the Western Balkans. But these hybrid threats emanate mainly from state actors, predominantly Russia and its proxies, operating in this area, but also from other state actors present in the region. There is a lot of concern about these actions, especially as we fear that their aim is to destabilize the region, so as mainly to deflect from other issues going on elsewhere in Europe, namely in Ukraine and possibly in Georgia and Moldova, etc. But these threats include misinformation and disinformation campaigns with a special emphasis on election interference, and attempts at historical revisionism, which also come from actors within the Western Balkans region. Now, there's also the weaponization of energy dependence for political pressure, legal warfare, malicious cyber activity, instrumentalization of migration flows, threats of critical national infrastructure, and intelligence and influence operations disguised as legitimate economic activities, which include unchecked foreign investments. Now, the disinformation and propaganda activities undertaken by the mentioned state actors have various instruments in forms of social media, aimed to bypass the restrictions set by traditional media. Additionally, the increased importance of AI in this context will further exacerbate the risks and raise the threat level. Cyber attacks are a constant threat, as we have witnessed here throughout the alliance, and have been on the rise in the last few years. Croatia is focused on developing capabilities aimed at countering these threats. This is a multi-domain effort, building the civilian-military divide and including state tools from diverse actors, diplomacy, military, intelligence, finance, and legal expertise, as well as engaging in support of private sector actors. This is awfully important, bringing the private sector into this domain so they can help with their expertise, which governments often lack in countering nefarious influence from nefarious actors.
Thank you so much. And I wanted to stay on this topic a little bit of the Russian invasion. So Croatia's geographical positioning makes it a key potential stakeholder in current ongoing global conflicts, particularly the Russian invasion of Ukraine. I wanted to ask, what is Croatia's foreign policy relating directly to this conflict? And do you believe that Croatia can play a key role in European security and mediating this conflict as well?
Thank you. I'd like to say that as a country that has first-hand experience of a war of aggression waged against it and is now a NATO ally, Croatia unequivocally supports Ukraine in its fight against the unjust and brutal Russian aggression. Croatia has provided and will continue to provide military, political, humanitarian, and all other necessary support to Ukraine to help face this Russian aggression for as long as it takes. Croatia has currently, its assistance to Ukraine so far amounts to around 270 million euros, ranking Croatia 14th in the world in terms of total assistance to Ukraine expressed by percentage of GDP. I'll go through it. This is a little bit unscripted, but we have supported Ukraine both militarily through, for example, we donated 14 transport helicopters of Russian make, so something that the Ukraine can use straight away. We have provided lethal and non-lethal assistance to Ukraine. We provide assistance in forensics, for example, in safeguarding evidence for future trials, which we hope will be set up for the war crimes that Russia has committed on Ukraine territory. We have developed programs for Ukraine psychologists to deal with PTSD, something that our psychologists went through following the 1990s War of Independence in Croatia. We have donated in demining. Croatia actively participates in one of the main issues that we've had is helping them in humanitarian demining. Let me remind you that Croatia last year in October 2023 hosted a ministerial conference on demining in Ukraine, resulting in concrete pledges of $700 million for demining efforts in Ukraine. Croatia itself donated 5 million euros for this endeavor. So there's a lot of things that we are doing on the sidelines, and what we try and do is work where you are strong and work with your allies so that they know that there are certain things that you can do that they may not do, so that they can put their efforts in a different area. We also participate in Ukraine's path towards NATO membership, as well as EU membership, and advance Ukraine's victory in the war, primarily through NATO structures such as the NATO Ukraine Council and Comprehensive Assistance Package for Ukraine. Now, as a country with a long border with the Western Balkan states, Croatia is aware the possibility of harmful Russian influence in the region and the broader context that the war in Ukraine poses for European security, which is why we feel that Russia may be trying to do all it can to create different hotspots so as to take away some of the focus from what they're doing in Ukraine. And this is something we all must be vigilant to. Croatia actively contributes to enhancing regional security in the region, and as well as the alliance as a whole, but does not position itself independently as a key player in mediating the war. Instead, it undertakes its efforts collectively with its allies and within the context of NATO. So this is where I come back to, it's important that each country focuses on what it's strong at and how best to help Ukraine. Yeah, that's that.
Thank you, Ambassador. I would like to talk a little bit about defense spending. Like Canada, Croatia is one of the NATO member states that has not yet reached the set target of the 2% of GDP for defense spending. According to an estimate of 2023, the country spent 1.75% of GDP on defense. What is Croatia's stance on the importance of military spending, especially in light of the current ongoing global conflicts?
This is an unavoidable question, I know. And recently we had a conversation with Canadian Defence Minister Blair at the EU Homes meeting, partly on this very issue. We have to keep in mind that the complexity of issues we are faced with today is on the rise. Conflicts in neighboring regions of the alliance, such as in the Balkans or the Middle East, are certainly affecting Croatia's perception of the security environment and the importance of military preparedness. Now, as such, Croatia is fully committed to contribute to the alliance's collective defense efforts, which includes a certain level of military spending as per NATO guidelines. Our procurement of the Rafale modern jets, fighter jets from France, the first 6 of which were delivered just last week, has undoubtedly strengthened our overall defense capabilities, as Croatia has now gained a deterrence power it did not hitherto have. The procurement of the Rafale has also changed Croatia's international position and role within NATO and the EU. We now have the strongest air force in the area between Germany and Greece. Now, we have also a lot of modernization efforts going on. For example, Croatia is in the process of procuring 5 new military patrol boats, the first of which should be delivered by a Croatian shipyard at the end of this year. We're also modernizing the army with Bradleys from the US, where we're upgrading our tanks, our artillery systems. We're investing in the armed forces, in the personnel, all of which has its aim of achieving the 2% goal. Now, we already reached the 2% goal as of 2021, including 20% for modernization. But since there's been a significant increase in our GDP in the following years, the percentage of allocation in relation to GDP actually fell below 2%. So, but let me add that Croatia has managed to keep the percentage for equipment procurement and modernization above the set limit. In 2023, Croatia reached 1.75% in defense spending, including almost 24% for modernization. Now, we remain committed to the 2% goal and 20% goals in modernization in coming years, and hopefully within the next 2-3 years, we will get back above the 2% threshold.
Thank you so much. I wanted to transition back to kind of focusing on the alliance as a whole. And so we've discussed many challenges facing NATO and the alliance. What do you personally see as the most significant weakness of the alliance as of now? And what might be some of the responses to those challenges?
That's an open question. Significant weaknesses. I believe that NATO is the strongest military alliance ever formed in history. And the simple fact that we are talking about 75 years of an alliance speaks for itself. Yes, we've had our ups and downs, but we are still here. We have added many more members since its beginning and continue to do so. Hopefully, that process will continue in our region with the accession of countries in our neighborhood to bring that vision of a Europe free, whole, and at peace really into reality. Croatia's relationship with NATO is knowing we have returned to this community to which we belong. As a Central European, I've mentioned this before, as a Central European and Danubian, Adriatic, and Mediterranean country, we represent an important link between these regions, and we hope to provide a deep understanding of the different security issues and challenges to broader neighborhood that the broader neighborhood poses to NATO. We must continue to stay vigilant. I think one of the weaknesses is we took our eye off the ball for a while there. So Russia's nefarious actions and war against Ukraine have helped us refocus. This isn't the only security challenge in the world, and we must keep up with what's going on because, as I said, the security challenges of today are not the same as they were 10, 20, and 30 years ago. This is an area that NATO is working on, needs to continue working on, so as basically not have a situation where we are surprised by possibly another 9/11. Now, remember that after 9/11 was the first time that NATO invoked Article 5 on collective defense. Let's hope we don't have to go down that road again. One of the reasons we're strengthening battle groups on the NATO's eastern flank is to send a clear message that NATO will defend every inch of its territory. Now, also, we need to reiterate that Croatia is a country that experienced the consequences of military aggression, does understand what Ukraine is going through, and we need to also be very clear on our support to Ukraine and provide it unwavering political, diplomatic, humanitarian, military, and other support. Remember, if Ukraine loses, there is a big question of where this war will go next. So I'd say that's not a weakness, but it's a warning for all of us. And we all need to keep inside the 2% threshold. Yes, we are currently under the 2% threshold for defense spending, but it is important that we all continue to modernize our military capabilities and infrastructure in alignment with NATO standards and requirements. So this is something that I think that we need to highlight on. I think those are the main issues that I would focus on. And as I said, don't lose sight of the goal. Don't lose sight of possible threats. Let's not be complacent.
Thank you so much for your inputs and insights, Your Excellency. And with that, I wanted to bring the moderated discussion to a close. I am now inviting any questions from the audience for our Q&A section. And I believe one of our first questions that I see here is what would Croatia like to see as priorities at the Washington Summit agenda in July?
This is the things that are focused on now. Let's not lose sight of the ball. Let's make sure that we keep that open door policy going. We need to focus on the Western Balkans. We should not allow nefarious actors to create new crises on NATO's borders. We already have one with the Ukraine. We need to show full and unequivocal support to Ukraine in its fight against the aggressor. Ukraine is fighting a fight for its survival. If Ukraine loses, Ukraine ceases to exist. If Russia loses, it will just be a recognition that there is another country on its border that has decided to choose its own way. They are a sovereign state and they deserve their own decisions, not someone deciding for them. So these are the areas that we want to focus on.
I wanted to stay on the topic of the US and ask you a little bit about potential elections. What are your thoughts on potential election results for these upcoming elections in the US, and how do you think a potential win of Trump would impact European security?
Well, that's not a loaded question, is it? Look, we're all concerned. A possible return of a Trump administration with his stated public statements of inviting Russia to attack any NATO country that did not fulfill its 2% threshold is not helpful. An alliance is there to protect one another. Remember that the only time we've invoked Article 5 is in protection of the United States. We then showed our solidarity to the United States in its time of need. Your alliances are not transactional. We are there for each other. To quote the three musketeers, all for one, one for all. We're all in this together. We support each other, and this has to be the main message. We are solid in our support of each other. Every country has its own democratic process. We don't know what the elections are going to look like in the United States. We're just hoping that if we have another Trump administration, that they respect their international obligations. In many ways, the United States is our leader. They're the ones who pave the way. And you look at the supreme commanders of NATO in Europe. They've always from the beginning been American generals. America is a European power. The simple fact that there's an ocean between us is irrelevant. They are present here. They need to stay present. Their presence in Europe is a security guarantee. And this is what has, in many ways, enabled the NATO to reach the 75th anniversary as a stable, secure organization of like-minded countries. So this is what we would like to see from the United States. They need to continue to show leadership in NATO and beyond.
Thank you. I wanted to now shift a little bit to perhaps back to Croatia and Canada and ask about NATO's perception, the perception of NATO in Croatia by the Croatians.
Well, Croatia have, as opposed to some of our neighboring countries, we have always and consistently been supporters of the Euro-Atlantic structures. Croatia, throughout history, has seen itself as part of the Central European Western civilization. Throughout history, we have been the border between East and West. So NATO and the EU are two associations which we belong to and which we've always seen as belonging to. When we opened our negotiations for the EU, and NATO was a little bit of a different struggle, but especially the European Union, we understood that we needed to work as a collective, regardless of political affiliation. The left and the right, they all came together and understood this is a national endeavor. We all need to be on the same path. This is the advice we have given all of our neighbors. We will help you along that path, but when we did it, everybody came together with the same goal. This is where we need to be, and the entire public government apparatus needs to work on that. It's not without reason that we support our neighbors, because everyone joining a club means that we all share the same values. We want to see them succeed. Them succeeding is also us succeeding. This is why we have been such proponents and supporters of EU and NATO enlargement. That is what we'd like to see. Croatia is fully on board with this, and we hope the others will take our lessons. Part of our experience, we used to always say that we're not the smartest or the best EU or NATO member, but we were amongst the last to enter, especially in the EU. I'm not talking about NATO with Finland Sweden, and before them North Macedonia, now not Albania, Montenegro. But we have consistently given all our neighboring countries our experiences. We've shown them where the roadblocks were. We've shown them where the hard parts are, that they need to spend more time on preparing themselves. It's not an easy process, and you really must decide where your future is. We see that some countries are more enthusiastic than others. Some countries are more enthusiastic about the EU than NATO. We sometimes question the willingness. I mentioned earlier in my remarks that if you want to join an organization or an association, you must then show that through action. You must show that your policies align with those of your purported partners. We see some countries in our region who do not do this, whose level of alignment with EU and maybe NATO as well is miserable. That's not showing a willingness to join. This is showing that you want to be a part, or you're trying to use different tactics. Again, we feel that if this is something that you truly want to do, embrace it. We will help you. We really are genuine there, and we have shown that we are genuine.
Thank you. I did want to shift a little bit to perhaps Canada and Croatia's relations, and I wanted to ask, how would you describe the bilateral relations between Croatia and Canada? And if you could add also, how does Croatia view Canada as a NATO member and an ally?
I mean, part of being ambassador here in Canada is tough because we really don't have any open issues. Canada is a friendly country. We are allies in NATO. We are partners in the European Union. It's often been said that if Canada was on the other side of the Atlantic, it would already be an EU member by now. So what we do is work on making sure that this relationship stays strong. We have joint projects together. Croatia has a big diaspora here, like some other European nations. They are also a strength in our bilateral relations, because these people are Canadian, but they also know that they come from Croatia, that their roots are there, and they bring their traditions to a Canadian audience. Diversity is strength. Here we have shown that we can be a strong ally, strong partners. As I said, we share the same policies, we share the same world vision. We are like-minded in so many things. So this helps when there are international issues of concern. Canada and Croatia fall on the same side. We both fight for the same things. So as I said, we have to be there to support each other, and I see that this is happening on both the internal and external sphere, and we will continue to do so. I don't see any problems in the Canadian-Croatian relationship. The only thing we need to work on is maybe greater trade. We do have some good things going on. Croatia has just signed an agreement on purchasing through EU funds 2 Canada-Air firefighting planes, new ones. We have 6 already in our fleet, so this is an addition. Croatia is ordering the Airbus 220s from Montreal to replace its national air fleet. Canada uses Croatian shipbuilding capabilities. I know that we have delivered 3 by now bulk carriers for Algoma Corporation here in Ontario. CETA offers a great avenue for strengthened cooperation in this area. I think one of the things we need to work on maybe a little bit more is direct military to military cooperation. Our discussion with Minister Blair the other week at the EU Homes was a good one, but it also showed that there is some other things that we can work on more when it comes to direct military-to-military cooperation. We would like to see Canada more engaged in our immediate neighborhood. We think Canada has not only the capabilities, but it also has. Canada was always viewed as an honest broker in international relations, more so than maybe some other countries. So it can use that to help mediate situations on more areas around the world. And this is where we'd like to have stronger Canadian participation.
Thank you for that. I wanted to ask, perhaps you mentioned the Canada airs that are coming. I think it's part of the Rescue or RESC-EU program. Other than that, is there, from a Croatian perspective, a strength? Sorry,
I didn't get that. The which program?
I think it's called RESC-EU, RESC-EU. RESC-EU. It's like the new fleet of firefighting planes. Also in conjunction with Greece. But
it's not just Greece. It's Spain, France, Greece, Croatia, Italy. We've made a joint procurement of the Canada Air firefighting fire bombers, the yellow planes, that propellers that go around. They're an excellent plane. I visited the de Havilland Viking facilities in Calgary, where the new facilities they're going to be building the new planes. As I say, Croatia already has 6 of these planes in its fleet. It's because they're an awfully good plane. We have during the summer, they are in constant use. They're a great workhorse. They're overworked. They're underpaid. And we also use them in neighboring countries. We have sent our water bombers, the Canada Air water bombers, to Israel, to Greece. They are constantly in Bosnia and Herzegovina, helping them with firefighting, and in other areas whenever they're needed, and we can provide the opportunity. We do so as good neighbors. But it was an excellent way for us jointly as Europeans. It took a bit longer than what we expected. The negotiations were hard. It took maybe a year longer than what we would wanted, but now we're there. We've signed, each individual country will be signing individual agreements. Croatia has already done so. I believe that Greece has also already done so, a lot of the others, but it's all coordinated through the Commission, European Commission. So
yeah. Thank you. And perhaps one final reflective question is, in terms of the past 15 years of Croatia and NATO, what has been, if you can name one highlight, what has been one highlight that you can point to and perhaps reflect on a little bit for 2 minutes or so?
I have not always been in that the center of, but I think that the fact when we became full members of NATO in 2009, when we participated as full members in our first summit meeting, that would be the highlight, because it was the sign that we have finally come back to our group. It was a hard slog until that stage. You know, we're still negotiating our EU membership, but this was the sign. For almost all members who had joined the European Union, the new members from Central and Eastern Europe, their first step was getting into NATO. So for us, that was the sign that we are on the right path. And that will always be, I remember this because I was in New York at the time. Croatia were members of the UN Security Council 2008, 2009. I was our DPR at the time. And we had a nice ceremony, both us and my Albanian colleague. We entered NATO at the same time. And the American permanent representative at the time was Susan Rice, and she hosted a reception for the two of us, as in the new members, in New York, as a mark of seeing the strengthened alliance and the strength of the NATO's open door policy. So for me, that was the highlight. It was, we are finally on that path. We have finally gone over that hurdle. Our next is the EU, and then we're back to that area where Croatia should always have been. So that's on a personal experience.
All right, thank you so much. I think that looks like that's all we have time for. We would like to convey our sincerest thanks to you, Mr. Ambassador, for agreeing to have this conversation with us and for your thoughtful responses. I've thoroughly enjoyed this discussion. I'm sure everyone else has as well. With that, I will now pass it on to our president and our CEO, Robert Baines, for some closing remarks.
Thank you so much, Bogdana. Sorry, Robert, can I just say, Bogdana, Apostolis, and Razan, thank you for moderating this. Thank you for leading the discussion. It was a pleasure being here. I look forward to it. I know that I did one of these webinars a couple of years back. Hopefully it won't be another couple of years before you're inviting me back, but I look forward to our further discussions. It was, again, my thanks to you. Sorry, Robert, you're up.
No, it's quite all right, Excellency. No, I mean, this is what we really do want to try to build. And thank you for pointing out about Bogdana, Razan, and Apostolos. Apostolos, I'm sorry I didn't introduce you properly. Apostolos Zezos, one of our other team members here at the NATO Association. But what we are trying to do is to build that idea amongst Canadians that we do have, it is a community, it is a group of friends who are protecting one another, really what the basis of the rules-based international order is all about. I love these discussions because, first of all, we get our team involved, and they do get to be able to ask you personally some of the questions that we've prepared. But also, it gives anybody who's watching a sense of who's dealing with our issues. Who do we have at the forefront of our diplomacy? And it's that kind of special relationship is a term that's bandied about quite a bit, but everybody in NATO has a certain special relationship. And that is what allows us to govern by consensus, by making sure that we can trust one another and that we can move forward together. And I think that's something that any Canadian can appreciate. And that really is very much a Canadian value as well. So thank you so much for making that so apparent. And your suggestion to make this more often, we will definitely do our utmost and perhaps have something in person. But I can't thank you enough. And for those watching, do remember you're part of our community as well. Come out, participate, support, make sure that more people in your orbit are talking about global affairs and Canada's role in the world, because we can't shy away from it. Security is an extremely important piece of infrastructure. The fact that it's invisible to most Canadians is an issue that we have to bring to the fore. So, Ambassador, thank you so much. Apostolos, Razan, and Bogdana, a very pleasant conversation, and have a great day to everyone. Thanks so much.